Back in the mid-90s to the early 2000s, the best known and most popular survival horror by far was the Resident Evil series. Resident Evil was a phenomenon right out of the gate with its first entry in 1996 and practically became a household name. It later spawned not only tons of sequels, but also a movie series starting in 2002, something that wasn't nearly as common back then as it is now. If you were a kid with a PS1 in the 90s, then chances are you'd played a Resident Evil game, or at least heard of it. It was right up there in the same league as Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Tomb Raider, Gran Turismo, Tekken, and all the other 90s classics. But by the mid-2000s, things had changed. With the 6th generation of consoles being firmly established, game design had moved on from the static backgrounds the series was known for, and fully 3D environments were now the norm. Coupled with slower sales of the first game's remake and Zero, and a reported burnout among the game's developers, 2005's Resident Evil 4 completely reinvented the series that was traditionally known and loved for its emphasis on slow burn horror, puzzle solving, static backgrounds, and inventory management. 4 replaced it with a faster paced, over-the-shoulder action horror shooter. The game was a crazy success, and at the time of making this video is reportedly the 3rd best selling entry in the entire series, and getting its own remake. It was topped in sales only by 6, there's no accounting for taste I suppose, and then 5, better. But there was one other publisher who took note especially, and that was EA of all people, best known for Need for Speed and their yearly sports ball games, who had released their own over-the-shoulder horror action shooter, Dead Space, in 2008, which its own developers have said to have taken heavy inspiration from Capcom's then still latest mainline Resident Evil entry. Developed by EA Redwood Shores, who would later be rebranded as Visceral Games before being shut down in 2017, Dead Space was released in October 2008 for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and Microsoft Windows. The player takes control of series' main protagonist Isaac Clarke, a spaceship engineer sent to investigate and repair a deep space mining ship that has gone silent. When he and the other members of his small crew enter the ship, they find themselves stranded, and that the ship's crew have succumbed to an alien scourge named the Necromorphs. Dead Space is a game I have fond memories of and played not on release but pretty shortly after it came out, maybe 2 or 3 months after. It released during a very crowded autumn 2008 alongside about 100 million other games, but still managed to stand out thanks in part to being a horror game, a genre that, even back in 2008, was already becoming more of a rarity. I remember enjoying it quite a lot when I first played it, all the way up until completion. I thought it was fun, pretty scary, and just all round dope AF. And with the remake having just came out, I thought we'd go back for a retrospective review in 2023. Isn't it crazy that we're at the point now where we're remaking games that had day one DLC and pre-order bonuses? If that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what will. So beginning with presentation, Dead Space was a really good looking game when it released, and playing it now I can say it does hold up well. The only thing negative I have to say is that there is some noticeable aliasing, meaning around some objects the edges can look jagged with that kind of staircase effect, which to be fair is something you'll notice on probably any game from this era, especially on a larger TV, but it's still acceptable and doesn't take you out of the experience once you've gotten settled in. One of my favourite touches they did was designing the game with no traditional HUD, which was quite innovative for the time. There's absolutely no on-screen clutter with things like your health bar and ammunition all being in-universe. Isaac's health is displayed on a light bar running along his spine, and then your remaining ammo, inventory and communicating with other characters is all handled via in-game hologram screens. Everything takes place from a single perspective. There are no cutscenes or flashbacks or segments where you play as another character. From start to end, everything you see is from Isaac's perspective, so you only ever know what Isaac knows. I like this as you get to experience everything in real time as it's happening around you, and coupled together with Isaac being a silent protagonist in the first game, all your reactions and thoughts are purely your own, without the more modern trope of characters announcing out loud telling us what we're meant to be feeling, or making quips or jokes, or saying the answers to puzzles before we've even had time to work out the answer ourselves. The environments we find ourselves in have a very dark, moody and oppressive feel to them. While it takes place 500 years in the future and we are inside a spaceship for the majority of the game, it never looks or feels too high-tech, but rather industrial and heavy-duty. The ship looks grimy, dusty and oily, and has a very alien look to it, like the Nostromo, Hadley's Hope or Fiorina 161. There are also lots of little touches that add a lot to the atmosphere, like how when you're travelling through rooms and corridors, you'll hear sounds like pipes and machinery hissing, clanging and banging, making you wonder what horrors could be lurking round the next corner or beyond the next door, or if something's going to jump out of the wall right next to you. Whenever you witness someone else die, their rig will make this flatlining noise, which I thought was a really nice subtle touch that really helps make the death of another character that bit more impactful. Another real strong point for the game is in its enemy variety. There are lots of enemy types, each with their own unique looks and behaviours. They really did not skimp out on the character models and animations, especially with the Necromorphs, and every couple of hours you'll be introduced to a new enemy type, which helps keep things fresh and interesting. There are also some pretty gruesome death animations when the player runs out of health. I can imagine people letting themselves get killed by different enemies on purpose just to see all of them. Although I wasn't scared playing it now, but the first time I do remember being pretty tensed up as I was playing. That's maybe because I'm older than I was back then, but I think it's mainly because I've already completed it before, as a lot of what makes the game scary the first time playing is the fear of what's coming, the fear of what might be waiting for you in the dark, the fear of the unknown. I will say perhaps the game does rely a little bit heavily on the jump scares though. The gameplay has also aged well, with aiming and walking feeling perfectly serviceable. Something Dead Space boasted over Resident Evil 4 was how you could move while aiming, something you couldn't even do in Resident Evil 5, which released the following year. There are a few odd button placements, such as holding LB on Xbox or L2 on PS3 to run, but it's nothing that should take you longer than a couple of minutes to get used to. It doesn't feel awkward or unnatural, just a little bit different than the norm nowadays. Something that really makes the game fun is its unique combat system, where you don't just shoot the enemies, but you have to strategically sever their limbs, which deals far more damage than body shots do. The dismemberment, as the game calls it, helps make each encounter feel more engaging and adds an extra layer to the combat. It is still really impressive seeing all the different limbs able to be cut off of the enemies' bodies. Something else that separates Dead Space from other shooting games is the weapon design, which makes use of Isaac's background as an engineer. Apart from a few exceptions, there aren't actually any guns in the game at all, but Isaac has to use tools as weapons, such as a futuristic plasma cutter and a weapon called a Ripper, which shoots out a levitating saw blade. I do like the inventory screen as well, which appears as a hologram in front of Isaac with a cool 3D layered design to it, and which doesn't pause the game either, it's all in real time, so trying to heal or select items during a fight can get pretty intense. You can also drop items like in Resident Evil, but they can be picked up again instead of being discarded forever, which I like. At a workbench, Isaac can use power nodes he finds to upgrade weapons and suits, and there are stores where you can buy and sell items and suits as well. There's also plenty of gameplay variety, with the regular hallway and room sections broken up with zero-G areas, where Isaac can jump to any surface and his gravity boots allow him to walk on walls and even the ceiling. There are also some sections with no oxygen, such as outside the ship, or rooms that are filled with poisonous gas. Here you have to work under a time limit, as Isaac only has a finite amount of air. You also get some pretty cool boss battles too, including a creature that can regrow its limbs, meaning dismemberment will only slow him down, and then the end boss, which was really impressive in scale for the time. Adding to these are parts which involve some basic problem solving, usually when Isaac has to make a repair. While I do like these sections, they are extremely simple, and I think they could have been a little bit more challenging just to make you have to think a bit harder, like the puzzles in the older Resident Evils, which are really satisfying once you figure them out. The sections I didn't enjoy though were the turret sections, which got a bit tedious, especially the first one where you have to shoot the asteroids. I remember the first time I completed the game, that part was the only time that I actually died in the whole game, and it must have taken me like 5 tries before I managed to do it, and I gather other people felt the same as they didn't return in later games. The game's story is quite small when compared with its 2 mainline sequels, as they do really open it out a lot and expand on things in the later entries, and this first game is mostly localised to the USG Ishimura. But there's something I like about returning to the first entry in these franchises, as they have a very tight, streamlined story to them. They haven't quite been bloated with so many additional characters and plot points yet, and they feel more concentrated, like they don't yet have all that extra heavy baggage attached. I also like how Isaac is an everyman. He's basically a repairman who just finds himself in this terrifying situation by chance, instead of being this ultra-heroic space marine Chad. He even looks older than most action game protagonists, with his greying hair and tired features when he finally makes his face reveal at the end of the game. The same space trucker vibe they were going for in Alien, something they changed for seemingly no reason in the remake. Instead of looking like this hardened, grizzled, middle-aged engineer, he now looks more like the engineer's apprentice who'd be following the actual engineer around. Dead Space does have a lot of really interesting lore and backstory to it as well, which is mostly told through logs and environmental storytelling. So to summarise, I do really like the original Dead Space, and it was cool to return to it after such a long absence. It has aged quite gracefully, and I would definitely recommend giving it a try if you've never played it before, or if you've played it back in the day and you're feeling nostalgic. It offers pretty much exactly what you'd want if you're a fan of sci-fi, horror and action, and is about as fun as the genre gets. To give Dead Space a score, I would give it a 9 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts on the original Dead Space and its remake, which has just dropped a couple of days ago. Have you played the original? Do you want to play the remake, or have you already played the remake? Thanks for watching, remember to leave a like on the video for the time and effort it took to make, and I'll see you next time.